Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Who are you living your life for? Not the answer you give people at dinner. Not the version that sounds noble and self-aware and put together. The real answer. The one that lives quietly in your chest at 2 in the morning when everything is still and you can't lie to yourself anymore. Think about the last time you did something purely because you wanted to. Not because it was responsible. Not because it was expected. Not because it kept the peace. Just because it was yours. How long ago was that? How long do you have to think before the answer comes? If that question made you pause, keep reading. My name is James. I'm 76 years old, and I want to tell you something I have never fully admitted to anyone, not my friends, not my therapist, not even myself until very recently. I was a good son my entire life, and it cost me everything that actually mattered. Before I go further, I want to say something directly to you. If something in what I'm about to share makes you uncomfortable, that's not an accident. That discomfort is trying to tell you something important, something you already know but haven't let yourself look at properly yet. Don't scroll past it. Sit with it. Because I spent 76 years scrolling past mine. And the longer you wait, the more expensive the bill becomes. Here's what nobody tells you about growing up as the good son. It feels like love. It genuinely does. When you're 7 years old and your father looks at you with approval, when he nods at your grades, when he tells relatives you're going to amount to something, that feeling is everything. Absolutely everything. You would do anything to keep it. So you start shaping yourself, quietly, slowly, the way water shapes stone over years. You file down the edges that make people uncomfortable. You swallow the opinions that cause tension. You smile through the things that genuinely hurt. You become, over years and then decades, extraordinarily good at being whoever the room needs you to be. And you call it being a good person. It isn't. It's disappearing. Slowly, politely, with a smile on your face and absolutely no idea it's happening. I wanted to be a writer. I was 17 when my English teacher pulled me aside after class. Mrs. Henderson, small woman, reading glasses always pushed up on her head like she kept forgetting they were there. She held my essay and looked at me the way adults almost never look at teenagers, like she was actually seeing me. Not my grades, not my potential, me. She said, "James, this is extraordinary. Don't let anyone talk you out of this." I floated home that day. Something had cracked open inside me, like someone had finally put a name to something I had been carrying my whole life without knowing what to call it. I showed my father that evening, sat across from him at the kitchen table, watched his eyes move slowly down the page, waited, heart genuinely hammering in my chest like I was about to hear a verdict. He put it down, looked at me, and said, "That's nice, but nice doesn't pay a mortgage." 7 words, and the light just went out. Not dramatically. No argument, no tears, no door slamming. Just 7 words and a silence that filled the entire kitchen. And I sat there and I nodded, because that's what good sons do. They nod. They understand. They don't make it difficult. I never showed him anything I wrote again. Actually, I barely wrote again at all. Slowly, quietly, the way a fire goes out when you stop feeding it. That part of me just went dark. And the worst thing, the thing that still gets me when I think about it, is that I didn't even grieve it. I just accepted it, filed it away under impractical, and kept moving. I became an accountant instead. 40 years behind a desk doing work that was perfectly fine, perfectly respectable, and completely hollow. I was good at it. That was almost the cruelest part, being genuinely competent at a life you never actually chose. Then there was Claire. I need you to understand something before I tell you about Claire. What I did wasn't dramatic. It wasn't one sudden terrible moment of cowardice. It was something far quieter, and because of that, far more devastating. It was just a slow, daily, invisible choosing of their comfort over my own soul. I met her when I was 24. She laughed at things most people walk straight past. She read books and argued about them like the ideas physically mattered to her body. She left little folded notes around my flat with story ideas she thought I'd like. What about a man who wakes up one morning and his shadow won't follow him anymore? Things like that. She saw the writer in me when I had almost completely stopped seeing it in myself. I loved her, completely. The kind of love that doesn't negotiate with itself. The kind that just is. Nothing dramatic. No shouting. No ultimatum issued across a dinner table. Just silence. My father's particular silence that was somehow louder than anything he ever actually said. Wrong background. Didn't fit the picture they had drawn long before I was old enough to draw my own. And at 26 years old, I ended it. I want you to sit with that for a moment. I let go of the woman I loved because I was afraid of my father's silence. Not his anger, his silence. That is how deep it went. That is how completely I had been shaped by then. I wasn't afraid of confrontation. I was afraid of disappointing him. Afraid of that look. Afraid of losing the approval of a man who gave it so rarely that I had spent my entire life carefully rationing what little he offered. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You have your own version of this moment. Your own thing you put down. Your own door you didn't walk through. Your own version of Claire. Maybe you still think about it sometimes. Late at night when everything is quiet and you can't distract yourself anymore. That thing you put down, it mattered, it was real, and you were allowed to choose it. I just didn't know that yet. Claire got married a few years later, had children, built herself a life somewhere I wasn't. I married someone appropriate instead, a decent woman named Margaret who deserved someone whole. I wasn't whole. I was a man shaped entirely around other people's expectations with nothing solid left at the center. We lasted 11 years. At the end, she looked at me one quiet evening, no drama, no raised voice, and said, "James, you've never really been here, have you?" Not even a question, just a quiet observation, like she had known for years and was simply finally saying it out loud. She was right, and the fact that she wasn't angry, just tired, was somehow so much heavier than anger would have been. My father died when I was 51. I sat beside his bed in that final stretch, just the two of us, the room completely still, and I waited. I don't know exactly what I was waiting for. Some acknowledgement, some moment where he looked at me with everything dropped away and said, "I see you, all of you, and you are always more than enough." It never came. And here is the thing that broke me open completely, the thing I didn't understand until I was sitting alone in my car outside that hospital, crying in a way I hadn't cried since I was a small child. He couldn't give me what nobody had ever given him. My father was a frightened man. That's all. That's the whole truth of him. Underneath the seriousness, underneath the silence, underneath the 7 words that put out my light at 17. He was just a frightened boy who grew into a frightened man, who loved his son the only way he knew how, which was to protect him, which was to keep him from risk, which was to make sure he never reached for something he might not catch. He wasn't trying to erase me, he was trying to save me. And that realization was simultaneously the most painful and the most freeing thing I have ever experienced in my entire life. Both at once. Grief and release tangled so completely together I genuinely could not tell them apart. He was just scared. And I carried his fear for 50 years, and somewhere along the way, I started calling it my personality. I'm 76 now. A few years ago, quietly, on an unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, with absolutely nobody watching, I started writing again. Nothing anyone will publish. Nothing that will change anything for anyone else. Just words on a page that are entirely and completely and unapologetically mine. And I want to tell you what that feels like after 50 years of silence. It feels like breathing. Just breathing. The most ordinary thing in the world. And somehow, after everything, the most extraordinary thing I have ever done. Here is what I know now that I needed to know at 20. Your parents' fear is not your destiny. Whatever they were afraid of, whatever shape they pressed you into, whatever dreams they quietly talked you out of with their silence or their disappointment or their 7 words, that was their wound. You can love them completely. You can understand exactly why they did what they did. You can forgive them fully and without conditions. And you can still choose yourself. All of those things can exist together. They have to, because the version of you that slowly disappears to keep everyone around you comfortable, that version cannot love anyone properly. It has nothing left. It is too busy surviving to actually live. But here is what undoes me most when I sit with it at night. My father didn't need me to be an accountant. He needed to watch his son live without the fear that had quietly devoured his own life. My freedom would have healed something in him that 40 years of my safety never could. My willingness to reach for something real would have shown him it was possible, that the risk was survivable, that there was another way to live beyond just protecting yourself from loss. Instead, I gave him obedience and called it love. And he accepted it, because he didn't know there was another language between us. We were both trapped, both performing, both loving each other in completely the wrong way. 2 people on opposite sides of a wall neither of us knew we had built. I'm not asking you to burn your life down. I'm not telling you to quit tomorrow or walk away from everything, or make some dramatic gesture that proves you've finally chosen yourself. I'm asking you one thing, just one honest thing. Somewhere inside you, underneath all the expectations and the obligations, and the careful person you have constructed over years to keep everyone around you comfortable, there is something that is actually yours, a dream you stopped mentioning out loud, a version of yourself you quietly put away somewhere and told yourself, maybe later, a life you genuinely wanted before you learned what you were supposed to want. It's still there. I promise you with everything I have, and it is not too late. I know it feels like it is. I know looking back across decades of choices, it can feel like the concrete has completely set, like the shape of your life is permanent and fixed and there is no point now. There is a point. I found mine at 73, quietly, on a Tuesday, with nobody watching and nothing dramatic about it at all. You can find yours today. Not because life owes you anything, not because you deserve a reward for all the years you spent being good, but because you never actually needed anyone's permission to begin. Not your father's, not your mother's, not anyone who ever made you feel like you were too much or not enough, or pointed in the wrong direction. You were always allowed to be exactly yourself. Somebody just forgot to tell you. And if I'm being completely honest, the way this whole story has asked me to be honest, that somebody was probably you. Tell me one thing you gave up to keep the peace. One dream, one person, one version of yourself you quietly put away. You don't have to explain it or justify it. Just name it. The comments are safe. And if there is someone in your life who has been the good son, the good daughter, the one who always kept the peace and lost themselves so quietly nobody even noticed, send this to them. Sometimes we cannot say what we feel directly. Sometimes we need someone else's words to say it for us.